Hey there, design cutters. Today I'm going to take you through a couple of different ways to organize your assets from Design Cuts. We'll start with a quick overview of the features on Design Cuts download page, then walk through manual file organization. After that, we'll dig into Adobe Bridge to easily tag and search based on a variety of custom parameters that you can set yourself. So after logging into your Design Cuts account, you'll automatically be taken to your downloads. You can also get there from Account Your Downloads. Under Downloads, you'll see a filter on the left that's set to all categories by default. You can use this to filter any purchase you've ever made at Design Cuts by category. There's also a search bar on the right that searches only within your available downloads. If you click on the thumbnail for a product, a new window will open with the full overview page. This is especially helpful if you're referencing older bundle downloads before the bundle guide was included. The View Files button will show you the files associated with that product without taking you to a different page, and PDF Invoice will automatically download a PDF of the invoice to your computer. So now that you have your files, we're going to take a look at how to organize them. If you use Adobe Creative Cloud and want to organize libraries to sync across multiple devices, check out the tutorial by Kim Klassen, also here on Design Cuts. We'll provide a link to that below. It's a great resource. Now we'll start into manual organization. So as with any organizational system, you want to keep your folder structure as simple and broad as possible without hindering your ability to find specific files. For example, a folder of textures labeled paint might suffice for most users, but if you have a huge collection of paint effects, you may want to break them down further into categories like oil or water. Perhaps the most important consideration is future-proofing, both for yourself and for computer systems. You may think there's no way that you'd forget that all the vectorized vintage illustrations you have are made by Unimber, but that might not be the case a year from now. So how would you search for those in the future if you've forgotten the maker name? You'll also want to consider that you will eventually upgrade your computer, change operating systems, or transfer files to external drives or the cloud. Some systems have limits on the number of characters you can use in a file name and don't like special characters, basically anything that isn't a number or letter except for hyphens or underscores. So by planning ahead, you can avoid extra work or file losses down the road. If you find that your folder names are getting too long, you can also establish a few simple, memorable codes by type or style. For example, MU for mockup and CA for clip art, something like that. Just remember that using too many and making it too complicated defeats the entire purpose. So let's talk specifically about Design Cuts files. Should you rename the files? Definitely not. The team at Design Cuts has made efforts to name the files so they're easily recognizable, plus it would just take too long. It can also be helpful to know the original file names if you ever need to reference them for customer service or in user forums. The Design Cuts site is already divided into a few categories that can make a great starting point for your folder structure. Just remember that your system should be what works best for you. The system that works with your way of thinking might be a little different than what works for me or someone else. So having said that, I'm going to show you how I organize my many Design Cuts files. Let's start with add-ons. So we can simplify a little by using the subcategories and even combining a few of those. I'm going to start with actions. I'm using actions as an overall category name for actions and presets. If you frequently buy actions for multiple programs, you may want to break it down further that way, or if you really only buy them for Photoshop, you can divide them by style, which is my personal preference. So under actions, we'll break it down by cartoon and comic, exposure and lighting, grunge, this could include aging, dirt, grime, even glitch effects, metallic, where I include foils, glitter, and anything holographic or iridescent, overlays, paint and sketch, print effects, meaning actions that mimic printer styles like offset lithography, letterpress, screen printing, or even photocopies, typography, and vintage photography. This could have some overlap with other categories, but I find this useful for actions that specifically mimic tintypes or other vintage photo techniques. Now we'll go to brushes. If you don't have many brushes, this might be enough. But if you use them frequently and have a large collection, you'll want to break it down further. You can do that by program, but some brush sets come with files for multiple programs, so I prefer dividing by style. So I'll set up some folders for acrylic and oil. Of course, if you have a lot, you can divide these into separate folders. Charcoal, chalk, and pastels. Elements, I use this to represent generic design elements like flourishes and banners. Grunge, again, this can cover a variety of things like splatter, coffee rings, anything that dirties up an image. I'll usually even add my spray paint brushes to that category since that's generally how I'm using them. Hair and fur, ink and pencil, metallic, nature, objects. This is a nice category for a lot of miscellaneous things that are specific objects, like a set of tarot card images, but where you don't really have enough of a single theme to warrant an individual category. And we have patterns, shading, so anything like cross-hatching, stippling halftones, and then watercolor and gouache. Next, we're going to move on to effects packs. This is pretty easy to confuse with actions, and you could probably combine them into a single category if it's too confusing. The main difference is that effects packs can contain multiple media types to achieve the effect. They might include actions, brushes, overlays, textures, presets, and more in one effect pack. Since these tend to be created for a particular program, I'm going to divide it that way first. For me, that's just Photoshop and Illustrator, then by style. Again, because these are so similar to actions, we can actually go over to our actions folder that we've already set up and copy all of the same categories, all the same folders that we've put in the actions folder. So we'll just go in there, copy those, and then we'll paste them into our Photoshop and our Illustrator folders. So next up we have fonts. With fonts, it's important to be aware of your license. So for that reason, I recommend dividing first by license, then by broad style. We're actually releasing a sister video to this one tackling font organization, so I'm going to be fairly brief here on this one. In my fonts folder, I'm going to create two folders, one that's personal use only. Within that, we'll create a folder for display. And then within display, you're probably going to want to break it up by style, like modern, retro, and potentially a lot more. I'm going to add sans serif, script, and serif. I'm going to copy those folders and then go over to a new folder we create, and we'll call that purchased commercial use. In there, we'll just paste the same exact folders. We also want to add an additional folder called license agreement, so you can easily reference the licensing for purchased fonts. I start the name with an underscore just so it stays at the top of my folder. So next up we have graphics. Similar to add-ons, I'm going to bypass the larger category of graphics and go straight into subcategories, since I know that I'll be using these folders a lot and that saves me an unnecessary step. It's worth noting that descriptions like background, pattern, and texture can overlap considerably and may trip you up when you're hunting for a specific item. So for me personally, it's easier to combine them into a single category called textures and patterns. Now you tend to have a lot of these types of files, so there's going to be a lot of categories within that. I try to cover most things by going with abstract, geometric, grunge, hand-drawn, holiday. Of course, you can add the specific holidays that you celebrate or create art for. Material. I'll go ahead and add in here fabric, mineral, paper, stone, and wood, because this is one where I usually know exactly what material I'm searching for, so it's easier to just add those subcategories now. So we'll also have metallic, nature, objects, paint, season, stars, sky, and space, and then vintage photography. Next up is elements. This is another huge category. You may want to divide by raster and vector first if that tends to be a deciding factor for you, but it also has the potential to create confusion with the photo category we'll be creating later, so I'm going to go directly into subcategories. So I'll start with animals, then banners and frames, which tends to be something I search specifically for. Beauty, fashion, food and beverage, holidays, again, break down further by the categories that are useful for you. Icons, infographics, maps, material, And again, I'll go ahead and add in my additional materials here of fabric, mineral, paper, stone, and wood. Then we'll have objects, people, plants, flowers, trees. I find that these intermingle a lot, but again, you can, break them off separately if that works for you. Sea, stars, sky, and space. Typography, which could also include, monograms, anything to do with typography at all. And wedding. So if your main business is weddings, then this would obviously be too broad of a category for you. So again, you'd want to create subcategories suited for your specific needs. So now we'll create the photos folder that I mentioned. This will have similar categories as elements, but are a little broader and more appropriate for stock photography. So inside the photo folder, we'll create folders for animals, beauty and fashion. These tend to mingle a little bit more in photography. Food and beverage, holidays, indoor scenes, objects, outdoor scenes, people. And we're also going to do seasons here. So within that, you might want to break it down by autumn, spring, summer, winter. And then also wedding. So next up, we're going to look at the templates tab. This category includes things like mockups, scene creators, and pre-made templates. If you work in a variety of industries, you could divide by style. And if you focus primarily on one style, such as weddings, you may have more luck dividing by type. So I'm going to go ahead and show you both options. To divide by style, we'll start with artistic, meaning assets that would maybe fit your design business or promote an art career. Beauty, fashion, fitness, food and beverage, holidays, interior decor, which covers a lot of the frames and canvas mock-ups that you see along with room scenes, kids, nature, seasons, tech, which would cover computers, tablets, and phones, anything like that. Next, we have universal modern. So these universal categories cover things that aren't made for anything specific. For instance, a clean modern stationery set that could be used for just about any business could go in the universal modern folder. So I'll also add a universal traditional and universal vintage to hopefully cover most of the items that won't fit in other categories. And then lastly, we have weddings. So next up, we'll look at organizing it by type. So anything related to getting or acquiring work, I put in a category called acquisition. This would include estimates and invoicing, pitching and presentation decks, and resume and CV, and any of those supporting items such as references. Next, we'll have logos and then mock-ups. So within mock-ups, we're going to divide by type within that. So we'll have apparel, books and magazines, branding and stationery, packaging, and technology. Again, you may find that you need more or less of these individual categories to be able to find what you're looking for. Now, the main difference between a mock-up and a scene creator is that a mock-up is generally an individual product or item, whereas a scene creator is setting an entire environment, like a desktop with a sheet of letterhead and envelopes and pens, an iPhone, etc., etc. So next up, we're going to create a folder for scene creators. Within that, we'll create folders for branding and stationery, desktop scenes. This could also cover workshop type scenes. Indoor walls, again, that would be canvases, frames, things like that. Kids spaces, mood boards, outdoor walls and signage, which will probably be a pretty big category, packaging, sports and games, and lastly we'll have table and countertop, which would cover most of your restaurant and food related scenes. So next we'll add a category for social media. This could further be divided by platform, style, or purpose. Then we'll have stationery. And within that, I'm going to divide by business cards, flyers and brochures, greeting cards, and letterhead and envelopes. And then lastly, we'll have UI UX. So this could easily be further divided by theme if you end up collecting a lot of these kits. So one thing Design Cuts offers is a lot of all-in-one toolkits with mixed asset types. So instead of trying to figure out where you'll look for it, I find it useful to give them their own dedicated folder, and I place them in with their original names. Makers is a category you might be interested in adding if you buy a lot from the same maker with a unique identifiable style, something you'd specifically search for. So, for example, you may use a lot of assets from Lisa Glanz, and if you're looking for something of hers in your collection, you'd prefer to go directly to a folder dedicated to her artwork. So you could make a folder for her within Makers, and then within that folders, you could divide it by, collection with the original name or type, like characters, patterns, scenes, etc. Just whatever's going to work best for you there. Now, if you buy a lot of bundles from Design Cuts, you'll notice that each bundle comes with a file type guide and a searchable PDF bundle guide. These are absolutely invaluable. They give you the full list of files included in the bundle by maker with reference images. So how do we make these work with our manual file organization system? This is really going to be determined by your own preference. One option is to keep bundles together in their original folder structure and always search by bundle. As you can see, this can get overwhelming if you're addicted, like I am. My personal preference is to create a bundle guides folder with the PDF from every bundle. This way I have the option of searching in the bundle guide followed by a file name search to pull up the file I want, or by going to specific folders like Elements, Fashion, and flipping through previews of files from multiple bundles manually. As you begin to use the manual system of organization, you'll discover what's going to work best for you, how you think about assets, and where to fit in new types of media. It takes some time when you first start, but after the initial setup and file migration, I hope you'll find it to be a quick and intuitive process as you acquire new assets. So now let's talk about Adobe Bridge. If you have access to Adobe Bridge, you can use it either in conjunction with the manual file organization system or instead of it. I personally prefer to pair the two, so I have multiple search options. Bridge allows you to assign nested keywords to multiple files at the same time without having to rename or reorganize anything. It also allows you to reorganize files after assigning keywords while still keeping those keywords associated correctly. So for this example, I'm going to dig into the All-Encompassing Vintage Design Bundle. Open Bridge, and I'll be using the Essentials workspace and View by List. Navigate to your files from the Folder tab on the top left. I'm going to use the Levity Fine Art Textures from Tool Allows for this demonstration. So creating a whole new keyword list can get a little overwhelming if you already have a big collection of files. So to get you started, I've created a cheat sheet based on existing categories from the Design Cut site and other recommendations I'll make as we go. So you can enter everything at once or just add what you need as you label new files, which is basically what I'm going to demonstrate here. So to start with, let's create a new keyword for Design Cuts. This way we can search for anything we've ever downloaded from Design Cuts specifically. At the bottom right, you'll see a tab for keywords, and below that, a plus symbol. Click that and type Design Cuts, then press Enter. If you look at the cheat sheet, you'll see that I mimicked all of the same categories from Design Cuts. So these Levity textures will be under Graphics and Texture. In Bridge, with Design Cuts still selected, click the smaller plus symbol and we'll add a nested or sub-keyword of Graphics. Click the small plus symbol again to add a sub-keyword under that of texture. You can add as many sub-keywords as you want under each category, just make sure you have the right keyword selected to create a sub-keyword under it. So select your file or multiple files by holding Shift or Command. If you click the box next to any sub-keyword, only that sub-keyword will be applied to the file and none of the parent keywords above it. However, if you hold Shift while you click on a sub-keyword, it'll also apply all of the parent keywords to the file. Now, unfortunately, you're not able to assign keywords to folders, so you'll need to go into each folder, select the files, and apply the keywords. Now from here, we get into the specifics of how you'll be searching. You might search by type, color, style, subject, theme, maker, program, who knows. For these, I'll create a new keyword of theme, then add the sub-keyword of vintage. To apply the keyword or sub-keyword to a file or a group of files, simply select them in your list and click the box next to the keyword. It's just as easily removed from the file by clicking it again. You can apply as many as you want and in any combination. There's really no limit. Just like manual file organization, I recommend keeping the keywords as broad as possible without hindering your ability to find what you need. It's a balancing act of time spent now versus time saved in the long run. Once applied, you can filter files within folders by turning on or off options in the Filter tab under Keywords, but more broadly useful by using the search bar or clicking the menu in the Keywords tab, choosing Find, and entering your criteria. Keywords and sub-keywords are very easily changed or deleted from the list, but just do so with caution if you've gotten pretty far into assigning them. You might have been doing a fair amount of work at that point. So Bridge has a variety of ways to organize files. You can apply star ratings and color labels, or you can even add files from across your folder structure to individual collections. Collections can be especially useful to gather files for individual projects without actually moving the location of the file or having to copy it. So let us know if you'd like to see more about collections in a future tutorial. Once I've assigned all my keywords, I'll manually organize my files into my folder structure, and the applied keywords and sub-keywords will follow those files wherever I put them. Like I mentioned before, I've created a starter cheat sheet of Adobe Bridge keywords that you can use to begin labeling. You can also, however, import the full list directly into Bridge. In the Keywords tab in Bridge, click the menu and select Import or Clear an Import if you want to delete any existing keywords, and navigate to the text file provided in the tutorial freebies. Open that and you'll see everything already organized and added into your keyword list. So you can really just go through and turn on the things you want for each individual file as you label it. You'll also get a copy of the manual folder structure we created today so you can get a jump start on organizing your design cuts files. I hope this has given you some idea of how to begin organizing your files. Again, each system is going to be unique based on how your brain works. Don't be afraid to sit down and map out a structure on paper that'll work best for you, and don't think you have to do it all at once. Maybe you start with a bundle at a time or one folder a week, but you'll get there. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.